Good morning. It is a beautiful day here in Florida. I don't know what the temperature is, but it's about the same every daggone day in the summertime. 99% humidity, 92 degrees. That's pretty much our forecast. So if you want an easy job, be a meteorologist in Florida. All right. So today, I think the plan is going to be to attack this fence line and see if I can't get some of that cleared out. The problem that I was having with some of these trees next to this fence line is that the fence had actually grown inside some of these trees. So trying to cut them down and not make contact with the fence with my chainsaw blade was actually kind of a challenge. And in fact, I wasn't too successful on some occasions. In fact, right there I just hit it, and so I had to take a couple of minutes to put the chain back on my chainsaw. Now, a lot of these trees over here, these small saplings, are not on my side of the property. So I'm really only cutting down the ones that are on my side of the fence. Now, I know I have this sped up and you can't really get a sense of exactly how hard it is that I'm working here, but the ground that I'm on is actually very muddy and actually almost swampy. And there are, as I work my way towards the back, I am actually sinking down in this sometimes to my ankle, and it's making movement and everything that I'm doing that much harder. And in fact, it's somewhat dangerous because if I step in something that happens to be wet and I didn't see it and I've got a chainsaw in my hand, or maybe I am actually operating that chainsaw at the time and I happen to slip on some wet mud, that could be actually a dangerous situation. So it's at this point that I'm actually having a discussion with my wife about, maybe I should actually come back to this at a later date when the ground is a bit more solid. Of course, stubborn me just keeps on going. I just really felt like I didn't have that much farther to go, and it is hot while I'm doing this. I got sweat pouring into my eyes, my shirt's completely drenched like I jumped into a pool or something. Yeah, it really was. Alright, so you have to excuse me, I'm a little out of breath right here. So we started here, and I had to clear out some ferns and some underbrush so I could get to some of the trees. It was slow going. And then this right here is where a part of Steve came down and destroyed this fence and fell over into the neighbor's yard. I think that might be high enough to keep the chickens on our side of the fence. And then I had already started to clear from the back of that fence line behind the wood chip pile up to where I just got. It's a beautiful morning. It's about 9:30 or so. Slept in. We've had about 2 weeks of rain, and this yard We're in a flood zone, and so this yard just holds water. And unless we get about a 24-hour period with no rain, this yard just gets waterlogged. And so I tried clearing the fence line in the back a few days ago, but I had to quit because it just got dangerous. I was sinking in ankle deep. So it rained for like another week, and we haven't had rain now for I think about 36 hours, and the yard is just getting to the point where I can probably walk over to the fence line and not sink down into it so far. So today's agenda is we're going to work on a couple of trees, maybe clear out some brush. So right next to the well house, old well house, that is a project that is upcoming. There is this Bradford pear tree, and I know it looks like a pretty crummy Bradford pear tree. And these things have a short lifespan, probably 25, 30 years. And this one's might even be coming up to the end of it. But it is pretty overgrown here. And I don't know if you can see, but up in this area right here is the power line. Now, the canopy there's nothing growing into the power line that I can see, but I would like to kind of clear some of this out a little bit. And now the problem is that it's right here on the fence line and neighbors' cars are over there. A lot of the stuff that's on this side of the tree I'm not going to be able to do much with. Maybe some of this lower hanging stuff here. But I'd like to be able to clear out, if I can get to it, this branch right here, and maybe even the one that comes down. But my problem is going to be that I have the well house sitting right underneath a lot of it. So if I can get out here and cut, then that will shortcut the fall, and I should miss that. So the problem that I was having with this tree was that it was so unkept for such a long period of time that the branches were just intertwined with each other. Even the smallest branches was wrapped around another branch, growing underneath the branch and then through a branch, and it was just a complete mess. And one of the things that you have to kind of keep an eye on when you're dealing with a tree like this is that sometimes these branches grow out and then they'll grow in one direction, and maybe somebody will trim it at that point and then it'll start growing in another direction. And during the time that it's growing, maybe that branch twists on itself. And so you'll look at it and it looks like it's leaning in one direction. But it may, because of all the weight that's on the outside of it, all the foliage that's on the exterior of it where I'm cutting now, that weight, when you cut it at the base of the tree, may actually cause it to fall in a direction that you don't want it to fall. What I'm working on here, let's see if we can pick this up. So we have a branch here that I'd like to get down, and there's also a smaller branch right here. I don't want to just cut this smaller branch because it does hang out over in an area that might cause it to do something funky that I don't want it to do. This main branch branches off into two different spots. This second one over there actually hangs over the cable line, which I don't want to put any pressure on. So what I'm trying to do is, when I cut this secondary branch here, it's pretty big. I don't want it falling in some way that is unpredictable. I don't want it falling on me. I don't want it doing any damage to the fence. So I'm trying to take some weight off out here so that I can come back, and I'll work my way back and then cut it off so that this, when it falls, is more predictable. And then I think I can cut this whole smaller branch that runs along right in that right there. So I'm not sure I did a really good job explaining that in the moment, but I think you kind of get what I'm talking about. So really what I want to do is take off the weight at the end of this branch and then only leave the part of it that I know is going to fall where I know it's going to fall. So you can see how that branch kind of, it grew one way and then it twisted on itself and it started growing another way. And it was that twist that kind of concerned me about cutting that all at once. All right, so now I have this side of the tree cleared out. And what that allows me to do is have a clear view of how these three branches, 1, 2, and 3, are oriented with each other. Because they sort of kind of intertwine once they come out here. And so I think if I just start out here and go light and work my way back, I should be able to get this. Once I get it cut back to about right here, I can probably just kind of come back to the base of the tree and cut the limbs as whole, I hope. So I had brought out about 4 or 5 different tree service companies to quote me not just this tree, but also a bunch of other things on the property. And the quote that I got, the least expensive one that I got for everything involved, was $8,500. This tree alone was set a $700 quote. Well, obviously $8,500 is not in the budget, and so what I decided to do was just piecemeal some things out. So the only thing that I actually contracted out to have done was the removal of the huge maple tree in the backyard, which you will hear me refer to as Steve. And then everything else I did myself. And the removal of Steve in the back was $3,000 all by itself. So this is the before of that Bradford pear tree that I had just worked on, and then this is the after. And you can see, you know, it looks a lot better now, and I just raised the canopy on this and got everything off of the power line and the cable line that was on the neighbor's side. So here's the front of the property. This is the azalea hedge up here that has been allowed to grow out of control. And in fact, there are 5 different trees. That's why you can't really make out the azaleas from anything else, because there are 5 different trees up here in this hedge. I don't think those trees were planted there purposely. I know one of the trees was a live oak, and then another one was a dogwood. I don't know what the other 3 trees were. And then this is what it looks like when it was in full bloom. And that's one of the reasons why we actually wanted to save these azaleas, is because it just looked really nice when it was in full bloom. And then this is what it looks like after I had trimmed it. It took about 2 weeks to trim this completely and get 4 of those 5 trees out. From the end of the dead grass there back to the base of the azalea bushes is 6 feet. So here's one of those trees that was at the base. And then here's a second one. And I had to cut these azaleas back pretty severe. That was a live oak tree. I decided to just keep that one there because it was a live oak and not a water oak. And yes, there is a difference between the 2 species. This is another tree. I didn't know what this was, but it was growing all weird. And it took a while to actually cut that one out. And then the 5th tree, this was the dogwood. And for anybody who may be concerned that I killed these azaleas, a month after I cut these back, this is what they look like. So by this time next spring, those things are going to be completely filled out, and we'll probably have a brand new fresh pink hedge. So I really think these are going to look nice when they grow back. So here, I'm just showing, this is like the only footage that I have to show the side of the property here on the right-hand side. There are these pokey pine tree looking things. I mean, these things, when you touch them, they're like needles. They will pierce the skin and they hurt. And so I went ahead and cut all those out, removed those stumps, because when you cut them down, those in true Florida fashion, they will come back on you, and they'll come back with a vengeance. It won't just be one, it'll be like 4 of them. And then I went ahead, got rid of a blackberry bramble that was on the side here, and you couldn't even walk where I'm walking right now because it was just so full. So we went ahead and cut all that back, and then we actually got ourselves into that drainage ditch right there. And I wasn't quite sure who was supposed to take care of that. Was it me? Was it the neighbor? Was it the county? But I just went ahead and took care of that while I was at it. Now, for some reason, I did not get any footage of the other side of the house and exactly how swampy that was. And I wish I had it, because it was just a mess. It was a mosquito haven. You really didn't want to walk back over there. There was constantly at least an inch of water sitting over there, and you couldn't walk over there unless you had muck boots on. So this is probably the best footage that I could find. So what I'm pointing out now is a crepe myrtle. And then if you look off to the left there, a little bit higher in the background, that is a dogwood tree right there. That one was growing into our power line that was going from the secondary power pole to our house. And anytime the wind would blow, we'd get some flickering inside the house. So I figured that this tree here was one that really needed to go. And I was actually able to get that out all by myself. That was a $600 quote from a tree service company that I had gotten. I used the same technique that I used on that Bradford pear earlier to cut this one out. And then this is from the original angle, just to give you a before and after image of that, where the crepe myrtle is out of there and the dogwood is out of there. And of course, this is after the driveway's been installed. Now this is Steve. He's a ginormous maple tree. The only reason why he's this big is because the septic tank is 5 feet from him, and so we had to remove him. He was co-dominant and a danger to the house, and this is what it looks like after we got him out. The stump ground, and then the pad for the workshop is actually set in place there in this shot. There was an old metal shed that was on the back of the property that had been hit with a couple of trees. We found out from the neighbor. And so we went ahead and tore that out, and that is just a pile of wood chips from Steve. The contractor that we had come in and cut Steve out actually chipped him and put those right where that shed was. So we've been able to get a lot done over the course of this summer. Most of it was just spent on the exterior of the house, of the property, reclaiming the property lines that we couldn't get to. The place had been so neglected for so long that you really couldn't get to the property lines. We still have a few things to do, but I think I'm just going to put those on the back burner for a little while. It's time to move on to some other things. I want to get busy on the workshop, a chicken coop, and a well house. Hey, thanks for watching. If this is your first time here, don't forget to check out some of my other videos. Smash the thumbs up button, subscribe if you like. Until